Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. Listen, I promise to bring you the best of the best. And today we're going to have a conversation with somebody that when she starts to speak, you pay attention to. You've probably seen one of her viral videos on Instagram. She already knows she's a Jesus lover. You heard the intro, a woman of confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, Amanda Pittman is on the show today. What's going on, fam?
Nothing much. I'm just so excited to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me, Shawn.
Hey, absolutely. See, I watch, and I pay attention to what people like, what people are noticing, but most importantly, like who really got a message that resonates, right? Before you were doing this, amazing speaking, teaching so many women how to walk in confidence. I want you to take us back, right? The audience right now, they love going through show notes, but we want to know more about, your beginning. Take us back to the young girl growing up. Where are you from?
Yes. Okay. I'm actually from Fort Worth, Texas, and on the southwest part. It's so funny. I recently this party, and someone who was from Fort Worth, they said, "So what part are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, I went to this high school." And they're like, "Oh, so you're from the hood?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like sort of." And it makes me appreciate it, because we live really blessed lives, and I'm able to see like how far the Lord has taken us. But growing up, I didn't have much. I wasn't this person who was super well connected. I didn't know who I was. And so I really resonate with the people who feel like I don't have a place to belong. I may not be in the in crowd. Those I feel like are my people. Those are the people who champion and say, hey, like, let me show you how to find your place. Let me show you how to find your stride. And so I grew up there, went to school for music in Dallas, Texas at SMU, totally on scholarship. I didn't deserve to be there, but God, I did not deserve to be at that school. Some people refer to SMU as Southern Millionaires University because it is a predominantly white, extremely affluent school, like old money, like it's the family. And that's where I met my husband. And before that, I just didn't have, like I said, I didn't have a good sense of self. And because of that, it caused me to settle on a lot of my relationships. It got me into relationships I should have never entered. It kept me from opportunities I should have explored. But during this time, after I left a relationship that I was in and God captured my heart again, it was right after that I started dating my husband, and he just completely showed me a different way to live. I was like, oh, wow, people can actually be healthy and not be toxic. Like you don't have to go crazy. You can actually talk and have a real conversation when you need to communicate. And I just learned a better way, And after that, he started doing videos on YouTube, and there were relationship videos, and those started connecting with people, and we started finding our people. We started to find our audience. And then after that, we started sharing platforms. And that's how I really found my place and my people and my voice. And over time, it shifted from just talking about relationships to talking about confidence, but finding it in Christ. Because after God changed my life, that was the theme I found in my life. I didn't have this sense of self. I didn't have this sense of identity. But once I did, that's when everything changed. And that's how God kind of shaped my story. I never would have anticipated it going this way. I wanted to be a professional musician or a music teacher. But God's plan is so much better, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Facts. I mean, God's plan is the one that, you always think you have the perfect vision, you know exactly what you want to do. But then, God somehow has a way of showing us that, hey, this is what's actually out there for you. And sometimes you get a yes, you think it's the right yes, and it turns out to be a no. You had a saying that you put up that I wrote down, and it said, there are certain things you can only learn in the trenches. What did you mean by that?
You know what? So many times we want to go from mountaintop to mountaintop. We don't want to walk through seasons that feel like we're in the valleys, that feel like we're in the trenches. But when I think about every single lesson that I've learned that's made me wiser, that's made me stronger, that has shaped me into the woman who I am today, it's not been on the mountaintops. It's been in the trenches. It has been in the trenches. That's where I found I truly believe, you know, you can say I have faith. You can say this is what I stand for. You can say this is what I believe, but you don't know if that's true unless it's been tested. And testing happens when when you can say, hey, if everything else is stripped from you, what do you truly believe? That's when you know what you're really made of. Um, and I've had some trenches time, like
Hmm.
there was a time in high school that was a trenches season for me. Like I mentioned, I had gotten into various relationships that were no good for me. Um, I didn't understand who I was, and because of that, it caused me to not only dim my light and become someone who I thought I would never become, um, but I also lost my inner light, like
Mm.
my motivation to live was gone. My motivation to do the love was gone. And so I actually had to through that season and understand all of these places and relationships that I'm trying to find fulfillment in will work. And that's something I could have only learned while walking. Of course, it would be amazing if I can learn that from other people's example rather than my own experience. But I was a little stubborn and I needed to learn from my own experience. And that's something I had to learn from the trenches. 2020 was another trenches season for me. And it was a trenches season for a lot of people. That year came with a lot of transition. The church that I was a part of, we moved from Atlanta back to Texas, where I was originally from. Lost a lot of relationships. It was a very, very challenging time. I felt like I had lost everything. I remember talking to God, and I even wrote it down in my notes app. God, I feel lost everything. But it was after I walked through that season and I had to cling to God for healing, for restoration, for everything in order to see him restore everything above and beyond what I could have ever imagined. God told me that 2021 was my year of recompense. And I had no idea what that word meant. And so I looked it up, and it to pay back for what I lost.
Mm.
And so I clung to that and I said, this is going to be my year of recompense. And when I tell you every single thing that I was attached to, my relationships, our finances, our business, ministry, everything took off in that year. But I don't think that I would have ever gotten to experience that had I not gone through the trenches. Going through the trenches, you learn, but it makes the mountaintops that much sweeter. And so I thank God now. I thank God for the trenches just as much for the mountaintops, because that's when you become who you're supposed to be so that you can sustain what God has you to have.
Oh, that's real. And for those of you listening right now, there has to be a moment in your life. Maybe you listen to this right now and you're in the trenches right now. You just don't see it. I think about it all the time of when I've been in the trenches just like you, right? And I can remember whether it was, working at a company, they not understood my value, or perhaps, doing things for a long time and people not knowing why you're doing it, but you're the only one believing in it. That's the trenches. And I appreciate you for saying that. Another thing that you said, it's gonna be a good conversation here, is that if you aren't facing your fears, then you are not numbering your days. Let's break that down. Break that down for us.
Yes. Oh my goodness. We assume that we have more time than we have. We really take our time for granted. I think about death really often. And I didn't used to be that way, but I don't know. My husband, he is one of the most positive people you'll ever meet. And one day I realized he's really positive because he's always thinking about the worst case scenario. Isn't that
Hmm.
interesting?
I'm the same
Like when
way.
you, yes, because when you're thinking about the worst case scenario, you're only grateful that that's not your situation. You can only have gratitude that you're not walking through the worst case scenario. And so
Facts.
when I realized that, I started living with the end in mind. Whenever we don't live with the end in mind, we assume that we have more time. We assume that we're not going to die young. We assume we're going to live till we're 80. And so, because we have this false sense of assurance, what we're doing is we're squandering the time that's in front of us. We say, oh, whenever I get there, that's when I'll do XYZ. Or whenever I reach this destination, or whenever I have all of these qualifications, then I'll be ready to step out and face my fears. But that only happens when you assume that you have time.
Mm.
All the people who I know who have faced their fears, there's something greater that they're striving towards on the other side that gives them the conviction to face their fears. There's a hope that they can anchor their faith in that gives them the conviction to their fears. Because what a lot of people assume is that, oh, there are people who are fearless, and then there are people who are just fearful.
Fact.
And that's not the case. We all experience fear, but the people who are courageous are the ones who have a hope and a conviction that's greater than their fear that helps them to face it. And so, for me, I just think about when someone eulogy at my funeral, I want them to say, Amanda laid it all on the line. She didn't waste a moment. Even when she didn't see how it was going to play out, she was going to step out in faith. And that's already that I'm living and that I'm leaving. And I don't say that pridefully. I just say that confidently because that's what people are saying about me. I just had a speaking engagement just yesterday. And my mother-in-law introduced me at this speaking engagement. And it was such an honor to hear her say the things that she was saying. She was saying, you know, I've seen so many seasons with Michael and Amanda. And one thing I can tell you about them, one thing I can tell you about Amanda as well, is that if God is telling her to do it, she's going to do it. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter if nobody else agrees. She's going to do it because she's seen me do it time and time and time again. And I live a very privileged life now when it comes to everything God has blessed our family with. But let me tell you what, in 2018, when Michael and I left our jobs, it didn't feel like that. We were on food stamps that entire year. We're eating good on food stamps, by the way. We're having salmon. I mean, those food stamps, okay?
Don't underestimate them.
I will not knock stamps, okay? I was grateful for that resource. And it's so funny because we were believing God to have this successful business, and we had never made six figures in our business, you know? And so 2018 was when we stepped out in faith and all of that. And then at the end of the year, after we had gone through just, you know, barely making it, we were in the car, and my husband turned to me and he said, do you really believe that we would be able to make six figures next year? And I heard the voice of God so clearly. And I turned to him and I said, he can do more than that if we would just believe. And that year in 2019 was the first year that we made six figures in our business. 2020, even more. 2021, six figures. 2022, I mean, we're on a run rate of potentially even 7. So all I can say is that is God's faithfulness. But so many times we're afraid to even take the first step. We're afraid to even be vulnerable and feel uncomfortable. But it's the people who are willing to pay the price of discomfort in order to get to the next mountain, you know? And so when I think about numbering my days, I'm saying I don't want to die with regret. I want to lay it all out on the table. I only have one life. We say YOLO. And whenever we say YOLO, we're thinking about doing something crazy, doing something risky, doing something belligerent. But what would it look like if we had that same mentality, YOLO, and we did that when it came to our calling, to our purpose, to our legacy? That's the life I want to live, and I want other women to live that life as well. So when we shift our mentality from this temporary mentality to an eternal one, and even what kind of legacy am I going to live? That's when you start facing your fears because you have something bigger than you that empowers you to face your fears. That's the mentality behind that.
Oh man, listen, you come here crushing it. Listen, this kind of reminds me, you know, I'm from the South, but I grew up like a real hip hop head, and all we did was talk and rap lyrics. And you coming with bars. Like, it's like boom, 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 boom. But it's all facts, right? YOLO, looking at it in a completely different light. But I like the fact that you guys really bet on yourself. A lot of people, right, if you listen to this, you're waiting to hit a certain number. Like, they're waiting to hit a certain number in your side hustle. waiting to hit a certain number in your business before you make that leap. Y'all made that leap with the stamps. You know what I'm saying? And I remember when I made my leap, I left my job back last year in August. It was so crazy to me. I was making six figures as a side hustle, but had to plan it out strategically, right? But I like the
Yeah.
fact you mentioned YOLO, but in a completely different way. You know,
Right.
and betting on yourself. You know, let's continue to break some of your statements down because I think you make powerful statements. But I want people to really walk away from this episode learning how can they apply some of the things you've said. And I also want to get into talking about what you got coming up. There's another thing you mentioned, and I wrote it down. It says walking in your God-given calling. Right? You mentioned about, you talk a lot about walking in your God-given calling. If someone's listening right now, they're asking, all right, Amanda, how do I do that? How do we make that
Yes.
happen?
I would say that your calling leaves clues. We don't know the entire path, and it's not our job to. It's our job to surrender to the God who already paved the path. And when we walk with him, we're going to be able to look back and see all along, oh, wow, I see a trend. I see a pattern. God has been using me in this calling and in this purpose. We don't know our calling and then step into it. We stumble into it. We really stumble into our calling. And you'll be able to find it because your calling leaves clues. Perfect example. I shared a little bit of my story. You know, whenever my husband and I were in college, when we first started dating, we started doing relationship videos together. And that wasn't my ultimate purpose, ultimate calling. I wasn't called to be in the relationship space in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
However, that little act of faith, that little act of putting myself out there started paving a way for something I didn't even see coming. And so many times how our calling happens. That's how we discover it. It's because we're able to step out in faith, get outside of our comfort zone and try something, and then it opens up a path that we would have never chose for ourselves. I thought I was going to be a professional musician. I was a flute player, still am. Maybe if I wasn't a professional flutist, then maybe I'd be a teacher. I taught for a year, but I realized the more I started walking in the line of outside of my comfort zone, the line of what is impacting people, what's making a difference, then I started to see a trend. And so we don't have to worry about figuring out the entire plan, but if we're willing to just put one foot in front of the other, God unfolds it, and we realize he's been with us the entire time. And I'll also say this, you're able to walk in your calling when you define your design and you align with that design. So many times we don't know how God has designed us. It says in the Bible that we're called to be lights that shine. Jesus didn't tell us to be lights that water the grass, lights that refrigerate food, lights that play music. He has called us to be lights that shine, lights that do what they're designed to do. But the problem is, so many of us don't know what kind of light we are.
Talk to
and so
him.
what happens, we may be a lamp, but we're surrounded by a bunch of firecrackers. And something is wrong with us as a lamp. We'll say like, oh, you know what? I don't light up the sky. I don't holiday. I don't have, beautiful lights. Maybe I'm not an extrovert. I'm not an in front of the camera kind of person. I'm not this, I'm not that. And you'll think that there's something wrong with you as a lamp when you don't, that as a lamp, there's certain things that you can do inside of a room that firecrackers just can't. You can light up a room. You can set the mood. You're safe, non-explosive, okay? And so when we don't understand how we're designed, then we can't align with that design because we're comparing ourselves to everyone else. But whenever you define your design, that's how you know how to shine. And so my heart is to teach people, hey, ask God about how he has designed you. Stop looking to the right and looking at everyone else's design. Say, God, how have you created me? If you are an introvert, be the best, most faithful steward of being an introvert. If you are an artist, Stop trying to be this analytical person. Stop trying to make your weaknesses stronger, but double down on your strengths. Oh, I can just go on about that. I can't tell you how many people have this false view of how I do everything. I don't do everything. I really don't. I just double down on my strengths.
Mm.
I know what I can do, and I'm very acquainted with what I can't do. I know my weaknesses better than I know my strengths.
Mm.
But what I'm not going to do is waste my time trying to make my weaknesses stronger and just say, Lord, thank you that you designed me this way. I'm going to double down on my God given design so that you can get the most out of this. So God has designed us with different gifts, skills, abilities, talents, passions, networks. And it's not our job to try and get what someone else has. It's our job to leverage and multiply what we have. And then that's when we're going to be able to say, you know what? I am God to use every single bit of me for his glory. But we don't get to have that unless we know how we're designed. And so if you want to walk in your calling, I would just say define your design, align with your design, and also just step out of your comfort zone and take steps forward. And you'll see that God has been using you all along. I'll
Facts.
stop there. But this is
Powerful.
passionate about it.
Powerful. I mean, let's talk about this, right? You mentioned, like, hey, look, focus on your strengths. So many times people hear, all right, you need to keep working on this and work on that, and you'll be all around a better person. I think doubling down on what you're strong at is how you excel, right? So if you're listening to this right now, if you're motivated, by what Amanda is saying, whether you're listening to this on YouTube, whether you're listening to this on Apple, gotta double down on your strengths and what you're good at. I can imagine, Amanda, you've done so many different things in this world, but there's also so many more things to come, right? We talk about books, right? I'm hearing that you got something new that's coming. Tell us a little bit about a project you've been working on. When is this book going to drop? Let our audience know exactly more about it.
Yes. So I have been working hard on this book called Stand in Confidence: From Sinking in Insecurity to Rising in Your God-Given Identity. And this book is for women who have simply built their confidence on the wrong foundation. And so it's sinking sand. You're sinking under the pressures of everyone else's expectations. You're sinking under everyone else's opinions of you, sinking under the pressures of being perfect, performing. You're just sinking in all of these insecurities that you are trying to find confidence in. And I wrote it because I've been there. And what I do is help you reestablish your confidence in Christ through the 4 foundations of confidence. And it's the same process that God took me through. And so these 4 components of confidence are clarity. This is where you embrace your identity and define your design. There's connection. There's connection with God and connection with others. Competency. That's where you expand your capacity and sharpen your ability. And lastly, there's conviction. Conviction is when you know your responsibility and you use authority. When you use all of these in conjunction, but you find them in Christ, that's when you build a confidence that lasts. So many times we try to find confidence in our appearance, especially as women. We try to find it in our beauty, our look. Maybe it's in our relationships. That's a big one. And when we find our value, our worth in these things, even our intelligence, there's a lot of different places we're taught to find it. But once you reach that destination and you've been placing it in the wrong source, you end up disappointed. But this is when you build it upon what Christ has already done for you, you'll never be disappointed. And you'll always have a conviction that will keep you pushing. Because I'll be honest, I'm the confident lady, I will be the first to tell you that confidence, for confidence's sake, is sinking sand too. It's sinking sand too. We're not called to be confident just so that we waste it on ourselves, just so that we feel better about ourselves. No, we have lives to save. We have a world to change. It's not just about us. It's about giving back and allowing the change in us to create change in others. And that's when we really see an impact. That's that sustains our confidence because it's not just about us, but we have something bigger than ourselves to help us keep going. So that's Stand in Confidence that comes out September 6th this year,
Oh, wow.
2022. Yes, I am thrilled about it. We have some incredible plans for that. And I also have a devotional called 100 Days of Life Changing Confidence. So it's a 100-day devotional, and it compounds each message starts very foundational as, you're loved, you're chosen, you're identified. And then it compounds into some of these deeper topics of you're tested, you're going to be challenged, but you're also going to be glorified with Christ. And so this devotional is going to pair really nicely with the book. And so I've been just so excited about these projects and getting this message out to the world because it's something that I believe in.
Oh man, that's dope. I mean, you're somebody that's a credible source, has been crushing it. I can imagine. September, you said September 6th, is that the date you said? Oh,
Yes, this
we oh man, it's gonna come here faster than you can imagine. But excited about that project. But also I know people are listening right now and they're like, you know what, I wanna get, in a room with you and learn from you. And I noticed you've been talking about a conference. Tell us a little bit about this conference and what can people expect?
Yes, so Confident Woman Weekend is our very first in-person conference. I've had virtual conferences, but this is the first in-person one. You don't want to miss this one. So it's called Confident Woman Weekend 2022. And the purpose of it is for you to release your uncertainty and take hold of your calling. So many times we just lack clarity because we're walking in confusion. We lack confidence because we're walking in confusion. We're uncertain. We're listening, somebody else spoke over us. We're listening to all of these doubts and uncertainties, rather than just going after what we know we're supposed to do.
Mm.
And so I believe that this conference is going to be an opportunity for us to truly let go of those uncertainties, but also to be equipped with what we know is true and be equipped with who God has called us to be so that we can go back out and do it. So it's equipping and activating. You're going to have plenty of time with me at the conference. And there's a VIP opportunity as well if you want an even more in-depth opportunity to work with me. And we have some incredible speakers, even some speakers that are not on the website just yet. And I'm really excited about that. And I'm really thrilled about what God is going to do. So Confident Woman Weekend is going to be in Allen, Texas this year. And it's going to be at the Waters Creek Convention Center. Right across from it is these incredible shops. You can go shopping. Also really great restaurants. So everything that you need is right there in the. You can stay at the hotel that is on campus. So you don't even need to have a car. You don't need to rent anything. It's just like a very all-inclusive weekend where you can just really fill back up.
It's
A lot
dope.
of the women who are coming, they're just excited to have some time to invest in themselves. And that's what we've created this space for you to invest in yourself, but do it in Christ.
I love that. Now what's the date on that?
27th and 28th this year.
Oh, that's dope. That's dope. Listen, I know we asked so many people this question, and I know my audience is like, all right, let's see how she answers it. Everybody's been on this show, right? They've been asked this question that if you're listening to this show, whether you're somebody who graduated college or perhaps you didn't even get a degree at all, but you're asking yourself the question of the podcast, school's over, now what? What advice would Amanda Pittman give?
Yes. I would say unlearn who school has taught you to be. Listen, I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm going to be straight up. School was just designed for you to learn how to be a very good worker, to be, as Shawn mentioned, really well-rounded. But you don't change the world by being well-rounded. You change the world by being passionate, by being excellent, by being driven. And so if you really want to use the most of your life, unlearn what school and society have taught you to be and learn who God has designed you to be. When you learn who he has designed you to be, you stop trying to be everyone else. Because whenever you know who you are, you also know who you're not.
Mm.
I can always say, you know what? I'm not going to be wasting my life answering these emails. I can get an assistant who is designed to do that, who that is in their, zone of genius, and have them do that so I can do what God has called me to do. And I want you to have that same. Stop trying to do what everybody else has told you you're supposed to do and be who God has called you to be. And I think that when you do that, you'll go back out and change the world.
Oh man, that's how you do it, right? You got to figure out, all right, cool. What have they taught me? What do I need to unlearn? How do I walk in my God-given purpose? Listen, Amanda, we appreciate you for rocking with us today. But most importantly, people want to know, where can they find you? Give us all your social platforms and where we can find you best.
Yeah, so this has been an incredible time. Thank you so much for having me, Shawn. And I'm so thrilled to be able to talk to your audience. It's an honor and a privilege. If you want to keep up with me, you can find me on my social. On Instagram, it's Amanda A. Pittman, 2 T's, Pittman. You can also find me on Twitter, same thing, Amanda A. Pittman. Also TikTok, Amanda A. Pittman. I love TikTok. TikTok is my favorite. And also Facebook, and then my website. So you can find amandaappittman.com and confidentwomanco.com as well. If you'd like to follow our ministry, Confident Woman Co., you can find us on Instagram at Confident Woman Co. as well. There are so many ways for you to get connected. So if you find me there, you're able to find ways to get connected with monthly challenges that I do, groups that I host. You're not gonna feel alone if you connect with our community. And so I'm so excited to get to know you, connect with you, and thank you so much for having me, Shawn.
Absolutely. And for those of you that have been listening, I want you to do one thing. Always remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it. Hey, what's up, fam? Thanks for watching. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button, smash that like button. We'll see you next week here at School's Over Now What. And always remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it.